"Sir, this laminated card from the internet does not grant you diplomatic immunity. You're under arrest." Imagine a judge saying that to you as steel handcuffs click around your wrists in a crowded courtroom. For one man who walked in carrying a leather folder stuffed with fake credentials and absolute confidence in his own genius, that sentence was the sound of his entire world collapsing. He thought he'd found the ultimate loophole, a way to make criminal charges simply disappear with the flash of an official-looking card. What he found instead was a judge who had seen this scam before and had zero patience for internet fantasies dressed up as international law. This is the story of what happens when someone mistakes a website purchase for actual diplomatic immunity, and how a single devastating question from the bench turned confidence into handcuffs. There are corners of the internet that sell dangerous dreams, websites promising secret knowledge the government doesn't want you to know. Forums where people trade stories of beating the system with one weird trick. And buried in this digital underground is one of the most seductive scams of all: diplomatic immunity for sale. The pitch is simple and irresistible. For a few $100s, you can become a diplomat. Not through years of government service or international appointments, but through a website. They'll sell you credentials, a passport, official-looking ID cards, all declaring you an ambassador of your own sovereign nation. The websites promise that with these documents, you become untouchable. Traffic laws don't apply. Criminal charges can't stick. You've achieved a status above the reach of state and local courts. It's complete nonsense. But for someone desperate enough, it sounds like salvation. Our defendant, who we'll call Marcus Brennan, had been facing his second DUI charge when he discovered this rabbit hole. The consequences were starting to look serious: license suspension, heavy fines, possible jail time. Marcus needed a miracle, and that's when the algorithm delivered him one. A YouTube video titled "How Diplomatic Immunity Destroys Traffic Courts" with 200,000 views and comment after comment claiming it actually worked. Marcus spent the next 6 weeks going deeper. He found the websites. He read the forums. He watched the testimonials. And finally, he made the purchase. For $347, he received a complete diplomatic package: a laminated ID card declaring him a minister, a burgundy passport from something called the World Service Authority, an ornate certificate naming him Ambassador Extraordinaire of the Sovereign Free State of Brennan, and a letter of marque written in flowery 18th century language that Marcus barely understood, but that looked incredibly official. He practiced in the mirror. He memorized his lines. He was ready to walk into that Georgia courtroom and watch the judge's face when diplomatic immunity made all his problems vanish. Marcus Brennan truly believed he was about to pull off the legal equivalent of a magic trick. The morning air in Judge Patricia Marino's courtroom carried the usual weight of consequences and stacked case files. Judge Marino, a sharp-eyed woman in her late 50s, had 20 years on the bench and thought she'd seen everything. She had no idea what was about to walk through her door. Calling case number 2024-CR 8934, the bailiff announced, State of Georgia versus Marcus Brennan. DOI second offense. Marcus stood, and immediately the room felt different. Most defendants looked nervous, apologetic, carrying the weight of their mistakes. Marcus looked like he was about to give a TED Talk. He wore a dark suit with a peculiar pin on his lapel, some kind of flag nobody recognized, and he carried a burgundy leather folder with gold embossing like it contained the winning lottery ticket. Judge Marino consulted her notes. Mr. Brennan, you're charged with driving under the influence, second offense. I see you've waived your right to an attorney. Is that correct? This was the moment Marcus had been waiting for. He stood straighter, shoulders back, voice clear and confident. Your Honor, before we proceed, I must inform this court of my status. He paused for effect. I am here under special diplomatic appearance. I carry credentials that grant me immunity from this court's jurisdiction. A ripple of interest moved through the gallery. The prosecutor, a young woman named Sarah Chun, looked up from her files with sudden attention. She'd heard rumors about cases like this, but never witnessed one. Judge Marino's expression remained neutral, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or wariness. I see. And what credentials would those be, Mr. Brennan? He pulled out the laminated ID card first, holding it up so the courtroom could see. It looked official, professional, with holographic elements and official-looking seals. "This is my diplomatic identification, properly authenticated and sealed. May I see that, please?" the judge asked. Her tone still even. Marcus handed it to the bailiff with a confident nod, like a poker player revealing a royal flush. The bailiff carried it to the bench. Judge Moreno examined the card, turning it over, studying the details. The card had Marcus's photo, an expiration date, and text proclaiming him a diplomatic representative with all attendant privileges and immunity. "And this was issued by whom exactly?" the judge asked. "By the authority of the sovereign free state of Brennan, of which I am the founding member and principal administrator." The judge set the card down gently on her bench. "So you issued this to yourself?" It wasn't a question, but Marcus treated it like one. "I established the sovereign entity, Your Honor. Just as any nation can issue diplomatic credentials to its representatives, this is recognized under international law." "I see." The judge's voice remained carefully neutral. "What else do you have there, Mr. Brennan?" Marcus, interpreting her calm as interest, rather than the warning sign it actually was, pulled out his next piece of evidence. "This is my diplomatic passport, issued by the World Service Authority, a recognized international organization with over 750,000 citizens worldwide." He handed over the navy blue booklet. It looked remarkably like a real passport, complete with photo pages, security features, and several entry stamps that Marcus had meticulously added himself for authenticity. The judge flipped through it slowly, her face unreadable. "Mr. Brennan," she said, closing the passport, "the World Service Authority is not a government. It's a private organization founded by an individual who had no authority to create passports. These documents are not recognized by the United States or any other country. They're novelty items." "Mr. Brennan," the judge interrupted, and now there was an edge to her voice. "I don't care about movements or principles. I care about law. Let me ask you a very simple question." The courtroom went quiet. Even the court reporter's fingers paused over the keys. "What country accredited you as a diplomat to the United States?" The question landed like a bomb in Stillwater. Marcus hesitated, his rehearsed confidence wavering for just a second. "I am ... I am accredited by my own sovereign nation." "Which nation is that?" "The sovereign free state of Brennan." "And where is this nation located, Mr. Brennan?" "It's a sovereign entity. It exists beyond geographical boundaries." Judge Moreno leaned forward slightly. "So it doesn't exist on any map. It has no territory, no population besides you, no government beyond your living room. Is that correct?" Marcus's voice got stronger, defensive. "Sovereignty doesn't require a territory, Your Honor. There are precedents, Mr. Brennan. Let me explain something to you." The judge's voice cut through his protest like a blade. "Diplomatic immunity is not something you can purchase from a website. It's not something you grant yourself by declaring your apartment a sovereign nation. Real diplomatic immunity works in a very specific way." She picked up his ID card, holding it between two fingers. "A diplomat is appointed by one recognized nation to represent that nation in another recognized nation. The host country, in this case, the United States, must agree to accept that diplomat. That process goes through the State Department's Office of Foreign Missions. They issue the credentials, they maintain the list of accredited diplomats. They determine who has immunity." She set the card back down. "This is not from the State Department. This is not from any recognized government. This is something you bought on the internet and laminated." The prosecutor stood up. "Your Honor, if I may?" "Go ahead, Ms. Chun. We've just confirmed that Mr. Brennan presented these exact credentials to the arresting officer during his DUI stop. He claimed diplomatic immunity at the scene and demanded to be released. We're also pulling records to see if he's used these fraudulent documents anywhere else." Marcus's face went pale. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. "Is that true, Mr. Brennan?" the judge asked. "Did you present these documents to a police officer?" I informed the officer of my status." "Yes, your status," the judge repeated. "The status you purchased from a website." Marcus reached back into his folder, pulling out his final weapon. "Your Honor, I also have a letter of marque. This is a constitutional document, recognized by the Founding Fathers. He pulled out a scroll tied with a red ribbon, the kind you'd see in a costume shop. The bailiff carried it to the judge, who unrolled it and began to read. Her eyebrows rose slightly. The document was dense with archaic language, claiming Marcus had the authority to engage in diplomatic commerce and was immune from prosecution by inferior courts. It referenced the Constitution, international maritime law, and the Uniform Commercial Code in a word salad that sounded official but meant nothing. "Mr. Brennan," the judge said, looking up from the scroll. A letter of marque was a document used in the 18th and 19th centuries that allowed private ships to attack enemy vessels during wartime. The practice was abolished internationally in 1856. And even if it wasn't, this document wasn't issued by the United States government. "Where did you get this?" "It's from a website that specializes in sovereign documentation." "A website?" The judge interrupted. "You bought this from a website. It's based on legitimate historical precedent. Mr. Brennan, stop." Judge Marino's voice rang with authority. "We need to be very clear about what's happening here. You have come into my courtroom with fraudulent government documents. You have presented fake credentials to a law enforcement officer, and you're attempting to use these fabrications to escape criminal charges." She paused, letting the words settle over the room like a heavy blanket. "Here's what's actually going to happen. We are going to proceed with your DUI case. You will be treated exactly like every other defendant who appears in this court. And then we are going to discuss the additional charges you've just earned yourself." Marcus blinked. The confident expression was cracking at the edges. "Additional charges? Yes, Mr. Brennan. Additional charges. Presenting fraudulent government documents to a court is a crime. Depending on how you've used these fake credentials, you could be looking at forgery, fraud, impersonating a government official, and obstruction of justice." The leather folder in Marcus's hands suddenly felt like evidence instead of a shield. The prosecutor stood again. "Your Honor, I'd like to request a brief recess so the state can investigate the extent of Mr. Brennan's use of these fraudulent documents." "Granted," Judge Marino said. 15 minutes. "Bailiff, please secure Mr. Brennan's credentials as evidence." Marcus watched in horror as his burgundy folder, his passport, his ID card, everything he'd spent months preparing and hundreds of dollars purchasing, was collected and tagged. His diplomatic immunity wasn't protecting him. It was being used against him. 15 minutes can feel like an eternity when your entire legal strategy is collapsing. Marcus sat in the courtroom, no longer confident, just scared. The other defendants, waiting for their cases, watched him with a mixture of pity and fascination. When Judge Marino returned to the bench, the prosecutor had a new file in her hands. "Your Honor, we've confirmed several concerning facts. Mr. Brennan attempted to use his fake passport to board a domestic flight at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport 3 weeks ago, claiming he didn't need U.S. identification because he was a foreign diplomat. TSA flagged it as fraudulent, but he was allowed to board with his real driver's license after questioning." Marcus closed his eyes. He'd forgotten about that. "We've also found evidence that Mr. Brennan has been advertising these credential services online, offering to help others obtain similar documents for a fee. It appears this isn't just about avoiding his DUI charge. He's been running a scheme." The judge looked at Marcus, her expression hardening. "Is this true, Mr. Brennan? Have you been selling these fake credentials to other people?" Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. "I was just trying to help people understand their rights." "Their rights," the judge repeated flatly, "by selling them fraudulent government documents." She looked at the prosecutor. "Ms. Chun, what are you recommending?" "The state requests that bail on the DOI charge be revoked and that Mr. Brennan be taken into immediate custody on charges of forgery, fraud, and criminal impersonation. We also request that all electronic devices and records be seized to identify other potential victims of this scheme." Judge Marino nodded slowly. She looked at Marcus, who had gone completely silent, all the fight drained out of him. "Mr. Brennan, on the original DOI charge, the evidence is clear. You were stopped, you were tested, you were over the limit. You've now admitted in this courtroom that you were the driver. I find you guilty." She paused, but that's the least of your problems now." Her voice became formal, the tone of consequences. "I am issuing a warrant for your immediate arrest on 3 counts: forgery of government documents, fraud, and obstruction of justice. Your bail is revoked. Bailiff, take him into custody." The bailiff approached. Marcus stood frozen, as if standing still might somehow pause what was happening. "Your Honor, please," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "I didn't know this was illegal. The website said—" "The website lied to you, Mr. Brennan," Judge Moreno said, her voice sharp. "And you chose to believe it, because it told you what you wanted to hear. That you could avoid consequences, that you were special, that the rules didn't apply to you." She gestured to the pile of confiscated documents. "You spent hundreds of dollars on fake credentials, when you could have spent that money on a lawyer who would have actually helped you. You could have taken responsibility, worked out a plea deal, probably gotten probation and treatment. Instead, you bought into a fantasy. And now, you're going to prison." The handcuffs clicked into place around Marcus's wrists. The sound echoed in the silent courtroom, final and unmistakable. "This laminated card from the internet does not grant you diplomatic immunity," the judge said, holding up his fake ID one last time. "It grants you nothing except additional criminal charges." As the bailiff led Marcus toward the door, his legs seemed to barely work. He looked back at the judge once, as if she might suddenly change her mind, as if someone might acknowledge that his documents were real after all. No one did. Judge Moreno spoke one final time, for the record and for anyone who needed to hear it. "Real diplomatic immunity comes from real governments through real official channels. Anything else is fraud, and this court will prosecute it to the fullest extent of the law." The door closed behind Marcus with a heavy click. The courtroom returned to its normal rhythm, but the lesson lingered like a warning sign. When investigators searched Marcus's apartment, they found dozens of blank credential templates, a laminating machine, and correspondence with 17 other people who had paid him between $300 and $500 for similar packages. The simple DUI case had uncovered a multi-state fraud operation. Marcus eventually pleaded guilty to all charges. He served 22 months in federal prison, was ordered to pay restitution to his victims, and received 5 years probation. His driver's license was suspended for a decade. The websites where he purchased his original documents are still operating, still selling the same fantasy to desperate people. The sovereign citizen movement continues to promise magic solutions to legal problems, and people continue to believe because they want to believe. Marcus Brennan walked into court thinking he was untouchable. He thought a leather folder and some official-looking cards would make him immune from consequences. What he discovered instead was that the legal system doesn't operate on purchased credentials and internet conspiracies. His diplomatic immunity didn't protect him. It didn't get his case dismissed. It didn't make him special. All it did was turn a DUI charge into a felony conviction and a prison sentence. Because here's the truth that sovereign citizens refuse to accept. There is no magic paperwork. There are no secret documents that place you above the law. Real diplomatic immunity is earned through government service and international appointment. Everything else is fraud. And courts don't just dismiss fraud, they prosecute it.